Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Fresh Fiction Video Book Club. I'm Samantha T, and today we have a special treat for everyone. We have two best-selling authors with us, award winners, Lynette Eason, author of Double Take, and also Erin Bartels, author of The Lady with the Dark Hair. Welcome, ladies. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.
So let's start off with something easy. For those of our listeners and readers who might be new to you, Lynette, can you tell us how you first got started writing?
Yeah, so I started writing uh, ages ago, it seems like, 25, 26 years ago. And I just had always wanted to write a book. And with my husband traveling most of the time, and I had an infant daughter, and when she went to sleep, I just would pull out my ancient, what do you call that? Old-fashioned computer and start working on it. I started working on a story, and that's kind of how I got started. And then I met uh, I met Dee Henderson through the internet. It was AOL Messenger at the time, and she basically taught me how to write. So that's the short version of how I started writing.
And Erin, you've also been writing for a number of years. How did you first get into the business?
Well, actually, I got into the business more on the publishing end first. In fact, I work for Lynette's publisher. And so I've known Lynette for a long time through that. And I think because I was an English major and I worked for a publisher at some point, it was kind of inevitable that I'd write my own stuff. And so I think I started getting really serious about it in around maybe 2009, 2010. And my first book was published in 2019, and I've just had my sixth published well, 2 months ago now.
Okay, so I'm going a different direction than I had originally planned because both of you have had numerous years in the publishing industry. How have you seen the business and audiences even change over that time period versus when you first started?
I think the biggest change that I've seen over the years has been how actually how indie publishing is now such a big thing, and it's more accepted. When I was getting started, so many years ago, you didn't publish because it was not considered cool, I guess. And just the accessibility with the readers. Like when I was publishing, we did everything in hard copy. Am I dating myself here? And we would send the manuscripts and get the manuscript. I think when I started writing for them, right, 'cause I write for Love and Sprite as well, but with Ravel, and I think they were just starting to do email manuscripts back and forth. Then, it's cool to see publishers come into this century, I guess, and take advantage of all of the technology available now.
I would add to that for the publisher that I work for and for Christian fiction, well, for all fiction, there's a lot less physical bookstores, a lot fewer, and a lot more online commerce and things like that. So there have been some big changes in that realm. I remember when I started working for Ravel in 2002, um, they started chattering about ebooks, and my husband was like, "Oh yeah, that's going to be a big thing," and I'm like, "No, it won't. What? Nobody's going to do this. Ebooks, what?" I still prefer printed books myself, as you can see behind me. um, but yeah, that's been a huge change. But I think that Lynette's answer is even more significant because there's more people publishing, which actually makes it more difficult for authors to be found by readers because there's just more out there. And it makes it a lot more difficult for people to make a full living off of writing because there's so much out there. And a lot of people who indie publish things for very cheap or often free. And traditional publishers just can't maintain that because they have to pay people to do their jobs.
Very true.
And I think also with the variety, and that there are so many people out there who are writing from a reader's perspective. We always love that because, especially those at First Fiction. I mean, you heard us playing the name game earlier. I mean, we're all listing off multiple books that we're reading, so we're always on the lookout for that. But I think it's also really broadened the scope of what we know is out there. And both of you are writing mysteries, but they're two very different types of mysteries. And so, looking at some of the commonalities, you also have very strong characters in there. And so, how do you go about in developing those characters and really pulling the reader in so that they're able to identify with the characters when they're in such unusual circumstances? Erin, do you want to start? Because with yours, I mean, you're also dealing with the time slip, so you're dealing with
Sure.
uh, characters in the past and present day.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even necessarily categorize what I write as mystery. Um, I I'm kind of like crashing Lynette's party here because of a scheduling conflict
Welcome.
earlier. But my books do tend to have, some sort of unanswered questions. So there's an element, I suppose, of mystery, but it's not like a traditional genre mystery for sure. But when I'm developing characters, I really just put myself in their shoes. It becomes an exercise in empathy where you are just trying to imagine being in their situation, whether it's current time or sometime in the past, whether it's somebody who's like you or not. And I just do a lot of placing myself in other people's situations and thinking, if I were this person with this background, how would this affect me? And where do I go from here? And I really do like writing a close, limited point of view so that the whole story is really told through a character's eyes rather than an omniscient narrator telling you everything. Everything is viewed through this person's eyes. And I think that the way they limit themselves and the way they see the world is how the reader gets to experience that world.
And Lynette, what about you with characters? Because, like Erin said, your books are definitely different because I mean they are so packed with suspense and action, and there's just so much going on. But it's the characters that continuously pulls us along with the story and pulls us in so that we're able to identify with them. What is your trick with them?
Okay, so what I do when I first start with a story, when it's time to write a new one, like right now, I choose my characters, I figure out their background, I figure out who they are, their personalities, and their occupations and that kind of thing. And I just spend some time getting to know these characters and figure out why I like them and figure out why I want to spend time with them. And I figure if I do that, then hopefully I can put them into the story that will make the reader want to do the same thing. And like Erin said, I do use that deep point of view. I'm in the character's head. Um, I want the reader to feel like they are that character, or that they're just right there with that character and feeling what the character's feeling, thinking what the character's thinking. And so in order to do that, I have to do that. So and what I try to do at the beginning when I'm introducing these characters at the beginning of the book, I try to give them something that the reader can relate to. For example, in the last book I just turned in, my hero has a sibling issue. His brother is just making him want to pull his hair out over a certain issue. And those of readers who have siblings will be able to go, ah, yeah, I got that. So you know, something that the reader can connect with. And that's just a big thing when you're creating these characters. Does that answer your
Well,
question?
yes, it does. Yes. And it leads me also to the other aspect because with the characters in Double Take, it's not only having them be relatable with the things that you're talking about, but they're also, I mean, they're suffering from PTSD. There are elements there of panic attacks. And
Mhm.
what else is it where it's or why is it critical to pull those other types of things in? I think it helps with the stories because we're all facing different things. And I think there's another element of relatability to that. But I
Mhm.
think I'm seeing this a lot more in different novels. And Erin, you have this also with some of the mental illness and the challenges there too. But what do you think it is with the writing nowadays where, and maybe it's always been there and I just was too oblivious to notice, um, that we are having these other real life issues that we're having to deal with from the character standpoint, similar to what we have in real life.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you do this, if you give your characters these kind of things, it just makes them those 3D characters, and they're well-rounded, and they come across as a real person, and the reader may say, "Oh, I know somebody that's dealing with this kind of stuff." And it just makes them seem more real, I think, if you give them something to deal with. We all deal with stuff, and the particular issue that I put into a story may not be exactly what that reader is dealing with, but they may know somebody who is. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, I think that I would say that maybe it's because we talk about those things a lot more openly now than people used
Mhm.
to. And
True.
whether that's interpersonally or people talking online and expressing their difficulties with going through something, or maybe it's just something that's in the culture more, where you don't suffer as silently as much. And I
Mhm.
think that people dealing with flaws or regrets or tragedies are very relatable, just like Lynette said.
I think that's a good point. Like
And I also,
we're more open about sharing now
Mm.
these days, I think. Yeah, it's a good point.
and I think also when, as readers, when we're looking for different stories, when we are picking up on things like this, like, oh, hey, this is something I'm familiar with, I think it makes us more inclined sometimes to pick up those books. And I know also in the
Yeah.
discussion sometimes that we're looking for it from a character standpoint, whether or not they're older characters or have they gone through a certain trauma. Um, Again, it all makes it a little bit more personable when we're, because we're all picturing ourselves in these stories. I mean, come on, get real, right? So
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I think that's true for some people. And then there's also this sort of movement of, well, if you have anything difficult, you should have a trigger warning of some sort on it so that people don't have to read about those things. And I don't feel that that's something that is terribly helpful. And for my most difficult to read books that have the most trauma, I have gotten the most positive response from people who've actually gone through similar things. And it's not them who are saying, like, oh, you better tell people that this is what they're going to read. It's well meaning friends or well meaning people, I think, who don't want anybody to feel stressed or anxious if they're reading. But I personally really like books that speak to difficult things because, and some people read more for entertainment and escape, and that's fine too. That's my TV watching. But my reading, I want real people.
and we're also always looking for the good storyline. And so there's lots of twists and turns in each of y'all's books. When you're going through your writing process, I mean, what is that like? Are you plotting everything out and then going back of, oh, let me put this little red herring here, or am I leading up to this particular reveal enough? Um, or are you just completely flying by the seat of your pants?
Um, okay, so when I first started writing, I was a pantser. I just started writing. Um, and it seemed to work pretty well. My brain was younger then, and but now it's older. And it doesn't retain as much as it used to. It's like, honestly, it's like a colander at this point. And so I am, well, I still pants some. I do sit down and figure out my beginning, middle, and something of an end, but so that I don't completely forget what I'm doing. And so I would call myself a plantser at this point. I am part plotter, part pantser. I plot and then I pants until I can't go any further until I plot some more.
Yeah, I I plotted one book that I proposed to my publisher, and I was so grateful that they didn't want it because after I plotted it, I felt like I'd already written it and it didn't seem interesting to write anymore. So I tend to, gosh, I don't know, I tend to think about how it's going to begin and how it's going to end. Um, and maybe in general how I'm gonna get there, but I don't write anything down. And then I start writing when I feel like, okay, I have enough momentum in my mind to get me to the point where I can just keep that snowball can keep rolling. But I don't plot ahead at all. And I think that that's why
Mhm.
I would never be able to write romantic suspense because it seems like you'd have to know a lot more than I do at the beginning of the writing process.
I mean, but that's also one of the challenges too. I mean, having that inspiration and the motivation to go through it, and that you are excited about the writing process.
Yeah.
Are there things that you have to do to get yourselves essentially in the mood to write, or to get you back into the headspace of wherever you left the story off from the last time?
Well, I'll say that when I am drafting a book, I try to do as much as possible all at once so that I don't have to get back into that headspace. Um, that's certainly not something I do every day. It's kind of a seasonal thing. Um, but if I can I'll take a week off of work and just write, or, I'll, occasionally I've done NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, to get a lot of momentum. Um, but it's really hard to maintain that for an entire novel, for me, at least. I don't know. I'm still working full time and doing all the other things, but I tend to write in bursts like that. And there's no ritual of like, I have to have this mug or I have to light this candle or be in this place or anything like that. But it's just like once you're in that drafting mode, just staying in it. And that's kind of all I think about. When you're going to sleep, you're thinking about what you're going to write next. And hopefully that sticks with you to the next day.
Yeah, yeah, I write in spurts as well. Um, and when my kids were little, I didn't have a choice. I knew that I would have 15 minutes here, I'd have 30 minutes here. And it was, oh, there's a long line wrapped around Zaxby's. Let's go get in that line and have Zaxby's for dinner so I can make notes on my phone while we sit here. My kids are in their car seats and can't get in trouble. I had to get really creative about that. And now that my kids are grown and gone, it's funny. I have all the time in the world now almost to write, and I I cannot make myself do it in any other way than spurts, like 15-minute writing bursts, and then go do something, and then come back and do another 30 minutes or something. But what really helps is when I have another author friend. Lynn Blackburn and I will have 15-minute sprints, and we'll try to beat each other and see how many words we can get. And so it's like a competition, and we're both very competitive. So that's the fastest 15 minutes in my writing day. But anyhow, and yeah, I just I don't have like a ritual or anything. I write when I have time because sometimes it's hard to find. So I just kind of write. I read what I wrote from the previous day to get back into that story. But yeah, I just sit down and write.
And how do each of you then factor the research into those processes? Because Lynette, I mean, you have so many different procedurals where I know people are, okay, how does this behind, is this really what's going on? And they're looking for those details. And Erin, I mean, your book also with the historical elements, I've got to believe that there was lots of research that goes on. And that doesn't seem, I can't, it doesn't sound like you're stopping. Okay, let me look up these particular facts in either case.
Yeah, I would say that in my case, when I am writing a book that requires a lot of research, I really will research for about a year before I write anything. So I'll do all the reading and all the interviewing and all of the things to learn about a time period and a place and maybe a type of job or whatever beforehand. And so all of that's there to an extent. I'm not a colander yet. I'm getting there. um, so once I start writing, it feels like something I already know. And then there might be a detail here and there that I have to look up. If I have somebody say something and I'm like, that feels kind of anachronistic. I wonder when that phrase came into being. I'll stop and look that up. But the big things I already know. And in fact, the research drives the story because you're really limited by what's true in history or in some other part of your story. And that's a creative way to be. Limitations, I feel like, are good for creativity, because then if there were no railroads to this place, I can't have this take place here in this time. So what am I going to do? Am I going to change the time? Am I going to change the place? All those different things. So the research for me will drive some of the plot.
Okay, so research, yes, yes, lots and lots of research. My background is not law enforcement. But it's just something I was interested in, and I love mysteries. I grew up reading Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, and so I knew that when I started writing, I would want to have some kind of suspense mystery in it. And then when I read Dee Henderson's book, I was like, oh, this is what I want to write. Okay, so this is romantic suspense. That's what this is. So, um, I don't know anything about this stuff. And so I just, God was really good about putting people in my path. Um, what happened was I ended up meeting an FBI agent at a writers conference, and I asked him, he just sat down and started talking to me. I didn't realize he was an FBI agent. And I finally asked him, I was like, so what are you doing here? What are you writing? He's like, well, he pulls his card out and he's like, you told me a bunch of your, what you write and everything. And he said, if I can ever help you, I'd be happy to. He's like, I don't write what you write. He's like, I write devotions, but I'm an FBI agent. I can answer your law enforcement questions. I was like, oh, that's cool. And so from there, I ended up having meeting another woman who's a friend of we became friends and was also an FBI agent. So they pretty much handle all of my law enforcement questions and that kind of thing. And then, of course, then there's research, there's medical. My characters tend to end up in the hospital a lot. So I have a buddy, who is my doctor. She became a friend of mine. So after she got over the shock of having me text her and ask her where's the best place to shoot someone so that you don't kill them, she answers all of my medical questions, um, and so I just have been very blessed to have people in my life that I can go to and ask questions and do that kind of research. And Google's my friend too, but I don't know if I always trust it.
Well, let's move over and see if we can get a couple of our fresh fiction facts in, okay? And each time I'm going to start with Lynette and then go to Erin, okay? These are meant to be short answers, kind of off the top of your head. So to start off with something easy, I know, you roll your eyes. We always say it's easy and we always end up stumping someone. Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Lee Child.
Are you talking about another writer?
Could be anyone.
Oh, it could be anyone.
Golly, it could be anybody in the world. My
We
husband.
don't want to limit you.
I just assumed writer. Sorry.
I was thinking that too. I was trying to think of the right writer. If it had to be a writer, it'd be Bill Bryson.
What is your favorite writing fuel? What do you need to keep going?
Chocolate.
I would say a hot drink, coffee or tea.
What is the errand that you most love to go do on your day off?
None.
What is a day off?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know how to answer that.
Probably right.
I could take pictures.
I like to go to the plant nursery. If I had to go on an errand, I would want to go buy plants.
I went to the plant store yesterday and shelled out some bucks for just 3 plants. But yes, I can relate to that one. What is the most terrible movie that you legitimately enjoy?
Oh, there's so many.
Like terrible movie that I legitimately enjoy.
Like, you know, it's bad, but
Um,
it's your guilty pleasure, I think, Lynette.
Right.
yeah, I don't know because I don't really watch a lot of movies.
Well, I watch a ton of movies.
Okay.
And I guess I don't think it's terrible, but my husband thinks it's terrible when I made him watch The Last Unicorn, which I loved as a child and I still love.
Oh, yeah, but it did traumatize me at parts, I have to admit.
Yeah,
Beautiful animation.
everything I watched as a kid was traumatizing. I loved Watership Down, The Rats of Nim,
Oh,
Neverending Story, it was all traumatizing.
yes. Oh, yeah. There's some more we can add to that list. Dark Crystal was one. I mean, yeah. All those children movies that just wrecked us as we grew up. Oh,
I don't know.
yes.
I think it was a good thing for me. It gave me a slightly dark sensibility that I employ now in writing. So,
What is your most dog-eared or reread book?
I don't reread books. There's too many good ones out there. I do not reread them. Once I'm done, they're done. I don't go back and reread ever.
well, I definitely have reread books from childhood. The book I've read most in life is Watership Down.
Hey, Lynette, if you don't reread books, do you DNF books? Do you say this is just not even worth my time? I'm going to stop and just call it quits?
Yes, I do that too. If it doesn't get my attention within the first chapter, I'm like, this is boring. I'm moving on. And I take so many books to either the library or I delete them off my Kindle or yeah, I don't. There's too many out there. Too many good ones to waste time on the ones that don't capture my interest.
It's always a big debate topic with us. It's like, oh, okay. What is the most unnecessary thing that you have bought online?
So many things. Spanx. That's necessary. I just didn't use it.
Oh, golly. I don't actually buy that much online. If you're talking about like unnecessary stuff bought online, that would be like the stuff that my husband buys.
Oh, also a fair answer. Okay. What luxury item can you absolutely not live without?
I don't know. I guess I would say so. We moved this past year and we have an outbuilding that we have renovated to be a cigar lounge and bar, and it has a pool table, and it's our favorite place to be. And at this point, I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't want to do without that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was just going to say my laptop. That's really sad.
Okay, other than books, because that's a gimme for authors usually, but other than books, what is something that you own a ridiculous amount of?
See, I'm not a collector. And so it's really hard for me. I collect camera equipment,
Hmm.
which I love to take pictures. And so I bought a really nice camera. And then when you have a really nice camera, you have to get the lenses for it.
That's your
And did you
luxury
know?
item, Lynette.
It is. It is. Okay, that's it. That's it. My camera and all the equipment that goes with it's absolutely ridiculously expensive. So, yeah.
And
It's a
and
tax
and
write-off though.
and mine is the complete opposite. I have a ridiculous amount of rocks because I just pick them up everywhere.
That's
I live
cool.
in Michigan and we're surrounded by beaches and there are rocks, beautiful rocks everywhere, and I just have so many of them.
That's interesting.
I've got a jar of them right in front of me. These are all fossils that I've picked up from beaches.
That's awesome.
You have them all even sorted into different containers, the
I
different types of
did.
rocks.
I did, but I just released a whole bunch of them to be part of a downspout project here at the new house, and it felt very dramatic to let them out of their jars.
That's funny.
Let the rocks be free.
Yeah.
Would you rather go back in time to meet your ancestors or travel into the future to meet your descendants?
Oh, I don't want to go in the future. No, thank you. This is bad enough right now.
I'm with her.
Okay, totally fair. Well,
Go
okay,
ahead.
how about an easier question? Can you tell us what are you working on next?
I'll go. So your double take, Target Acquired comes out in August, and then Serial Burn comes out in January of 2025. And then Book 4 is what I'm working on. It's the one that will come out in August of 2025. And then I have another series in the lineup that I'll have to work on. So that's always something.
And I would say that no, I can't tell you what I'm working on next because I'm keeping it as secret as possible. It's a historical fiction with real people. So it's not a fictional character in a historical world. It's about real people in a real event. And I'm very surprised that there aren't books out yet on this. And I'm very afraid that if I say it out loud, somebody else will publish it first.
Understandable, yes. But with that in mind, can each of you tell us the best way for our readers and listeners to keep in touch with you, find out what is coming next, when we should look out for it, and essentially just find out what's going on?
So I have a website, as all good authors do, LynetteEason.com. And in order to keep up with me, your best bet is to sign up for my newsletter. In fact, I was working on one today because I'm a little late, but it generally comes out at the first week of the month. And I'm also on Twitter or whatever it is, X now, Instagram. And so you can find me if you want to know what's going on, you can find me. Just go search.
What she said. Yeah. I think the best way to actually keep up with what I'm doing is Instagram or Facebook because I post more regularly there. My newsletter is absolutely a great way to get publishing news, but it's definitely not as frequent as if it's just in your feed somewhere. And you can find me at erinbartels.com and I have my schedule of appearances there too. So if people are in the Midwest, sometimes I might be around where you are.
Well, Lynette, Erin, thanks both of you for joining us this evening. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you'll stick around to take some other questions from our readers.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Samantha.
Sure, thank you.